Today, we're going to talk about car tuning. No, not car tuning, but car tuning. How do you tune your car to get maximum horsepower? And can you even tune modern cars? Horsepower comes from explosions. You squeeze as much air as you can into the cylinders, add just the right amount of fuel, ignite it with a spark, and boom! The mix of air and fuel, or air-fuel ratio, determines how much energy is released and how much emissions are produced. Car makers tune for the ideal air-fuel ratio, which is 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel. But here's the thing. That ratio might be ideal for maximum economy and emissions, which is what the car makers want. But it is not ideal for maximum power, which is closer to 12 to 1. This means your car is capable of more power, and that's where tuning comes in. The challenge is that cars have gotten a lot more complicated, and so has tuning. When engines first appeared, the air-fuel mix was controlled by a carburetor. This simple device worked by sucking the air into the engine along with the airstream. Adjusting the fuel to air mixture was simple. You fiddled with a few screws to allow more or less fuel to enter the engine. Then you listened. It's pretty much like tuning a musical instrument. If it sounded right, it was going to drive right. Pretty simple. But it wasn't long before car makers invented a more efficient way of delivering fuel to the mix. Fuel injection. The carburetor doesn't distribute the air-fuel mixture evenly, which results in higher fuel consumption and emissions. Fuel injection delivers a fine mist directly into each cylinder, so you get better combustion and less on-burn fuel. Then, to get even better fuel economy, engineers needed to vary the ratio depending on things like altitude, engine temperature, and speed. But varying the spray mechanically was pretty limited, so things got even more complicated. Car makers started working on electronic fuel injection, which needed a computer. Electronic fuel injection uses sensors to measure things like speed and temperature. The measurements get fed into a computer system. This system has saved settings that are applied to different situations. These settings are known as maps or tunes, and are basically graphs that the computer looks at when it analyzes stuff. So let's see how this works. You get in your car and start the engine. The car's cold. A little sensor on the engine measures the temperature and sends a message to the engine control unit, or ECU. Hey, it's pretty cold over here. So the ECU sends a message to the fuel injector. Hey, spray more fuel. As you drive and the engine warms up, the same little sensor starts getting hot. So it sends a message to the ECU. Things are getting hot here. At the same time, another sensor sends the ECU a message saying the speed is currently 40 miles an hour. So the ECU consults its map. The map tells what the fuel ratio is best given the heat and speed. Then it instructs the fuel injector on the amount of fuel to achieve that ratio. It was the challenges of fuel injectors that drove the car into the computer age. The earliest version of the electronic fuel injection system goes back to 1953. It was invented by the Bendix Corporation but never used. Then Bosch brought out the Jetronic electronic fuel injection system, which used engine speed and a pressure pad. By the 1970s and 1980s, laws became stricter on emissions, and by the 1990s, almost all cars had fuel injectors, at least here in the United States. Today's automobiles have computers that control everything. It's not just one computer, but a collection of electronic control units that together are referred to as the car's computer. Some cars have up to 80 electronic control units, or ECUs, that control different electrical systems or subsystems on the vehicle. Typically, the biggest processor is the engine control unit we talked about before. It's sometimes also called the Engine Control Module, or ECM. This is probably so you don't confuse it with the generic electronic control unit. It's not hard to get confused. There are just so many electronic control units and modules. You can have powertrain control module, PCM, transmission control module, TCM, brake control module, BCM, and much, much more. They all talk to each other via CAN, which stands for Controller Area Network. It was developed in the 1980s by Robert Bosch. Mercedes-Benz was the first car maker to use the CAN system back in 1992. CAN allows messages to travel together on the same wire that gives priority to more urgent messages. Just like you get all kinds of messages on the line feeding your computer, your phone, your video, and they're all on the same wire, but the computers can make sense of it all. So remember, the engine control unit from before, which sent messages to the fuel injectors. Well, those messages are pretty important. So are the messages from the brake control module, for example. But now you've also got messages from the infotainment system, like you connected the phone to the Bluetooth. And all these messages are traveling around as fast as they can. It's pretty busy on the CAN highway. So, what happens if there's a traffic jam and the message can't get through? Very good question. This might be okay for infotainment messages. You teenagers can't wait a few seconds for their iPhones to connect. But it's not okay when it's a message to the brakes. Stop right now is pretty important. Well, that's where the CAN acts like a traffic cop. It tells the infotainment system to back off and waves the brake and other priority messages through. So what does this have to do with tuning? Well, nowadays, if you want to tell your engine to do something, you've got to do it digitally rather than mechanically. And you do that via the OBD port. OBD stands for On-Board Diagnostics. It's the access to the car's computer. Mechanics use devices that plug into the OBD port to see what needs to be tested and repaired when things go wrong. The port is usually located somewhere near the dash. An OBD reader checks the trouble code and then clears it from the computer's memory when it's fixed. So it's key to fixing problems, but it's also the key to tuning your car. Every decision your engine control unit makes depends on how it was programmed or tuned. Like we mentioned before, you could take one car and give it completely different characters simply by changing the software on the ECM. One character could have a need for speed and be tuned for maximum power. The other could be conservatively tuned for maximum fuel economy. Your car will come out of the factory tuned for economy and reliability. This often means they made the performance of the car lower. A different tune could make the car go much faster. Tuning means the right software and knowing how to use it. This hacking art has become so advanced that homebrewed engine remapping software is available to download for the brave and tech-savvy. There's no shortage of devices that are available to tune your car. You can use the software to read the current settings, modify parameters, and then write them to the computer. Of course, there's so much information and so many parameters that if you didn't know what you were doing, you could all drown in data. And if you did tinker, you want to make really small incremental changes and then test what effect they have on the car. It's also a very good idea to save the original settings so you can revert back to the standard factory map. Most tuners have that device set in so you can save it. You know that feeling when you push save on a document that writes over the old document and you suddenly remember one paragraph you should have kept? You don't want to have that feeling when you're tuning your vehicle. But there's other things that can go wrong too, which is why we're flashing this disclaimer. Bad tunes can damage engines and be dangerous to drivers. They can also shorten engine life, lead to greater fuel consumption, void the car's warranty, and might even be illegal. Car manufacturers obviously don't want you messing around, so ECUs have protection locks. This is also to prevent high-tech carjackers or car hackers from plugging into your OBD port to steal your car. Although pros could do it anyways. They can bypass just about anything. There are a lot of professional tuners who will tune your car for you. You'd want to make sure of their credentials before you let them get their hands on your car. In fact, they wouldn't even need to touch your car. You can buy a programmer online, download your ECU file, upload it to the tuning company, who then retune or flash or chip it and send it back to you for downloading. Or, if you're on a budget, there are performance chip plugins on the internet, as low as $50. Not sure what you're really going to get for that. Sounds like something we need to test. Other companies have taken advantage of the OBD port as well. Insurance companies use it to analyze driving habits and give discounts based on better driving habits. You can also put dongles on it that connect your iPhone to provide alerts. This includes making sure your teenager keeps the speed limits. Pretty much a telematics system. Be careful about plugging dongles into your car. Think about your car as you would your computer. You'd be careful about viruses and hacking on your computer. Same applies to your car. After all, it really is becoming a big computer on wheels, which all makes modern tuning very hard. But it's not impossible. If you want my opinion, tuning older mechanical cars is more fun. It had more basic karma and feel. We have more exciting car content coming very soon, so subscribe below and ring that bell to get notified of our next video.